Number 6. ALEKSANDRA PALIBNAYA. In 2019, the body of a Russian woman was discovered by local authorities on the streets of St. Petersburg. It exhibited multiple stab wounds and was later identified as that of 37-year-old art historian ALEKSANDRA PALIBNAYA. She had been involved in a relationship with Daniil Vasilyev, who was 17 years her junior. The man would later admit that PALIBNAYA had been acting as his sugar mama, taking care of all his expenses, including food and clothes. It's unclear how long they'd been together prior to the woman's brutal slaying. Vasilyev became the prime suspect, and the investigation led the authorities to a village outside St. Petersburg, where his mother lived. She told the police that her son had confessed to killing PALIBNAYA. He was arrested and explained that a triggering factor in the frenzied attack had been an argument in which PALIBNAYA had called him a gigolo. He stabbed her repeatedly before abandoning her in the street as she lay dying. Number 5. Michael MCNEW. In August of 2017, a former stripper murdered her sugar daddy when the man tried to end their relationship. 33-year-old Jennifer Lynn Morrissey and Michael MCNEW, who was nearly twice her age, had met at a strip club in Bristol Township, Pennsylvania, where Morrissey worked. The two bonded over a shared love of motorcycles, and before long, MCNEW started to pursue Morrissey romantically. The woman initially agreed to go out with him if he paid her electricity bill, which reportedly amounted to $1,200. Over the course of their relationship, she would come to refer to him as her sugar daddy. MCNEW lavished her with money and gifts, including cars, motorcycles, and a trip to Puerto Rico. He paid her legal fees when she got in trouble, either because of drugs or, in one incident, for hitting a cyclist with her car. Friends and family, particularly MCNEW's adult daughter, tried to warn him about his girlfriend. As Morrissey grew closer to him, MCNEW reportedly made her the beneficiary of his life insurance policies, estimated at over $360,000. The relationship turned sour in early 2017, when Morrissey started seeing another man who was reportedly part of a motorcycle gang. MCNEW then threatened to cut her off financially. Morrissey was already living with her new boyfriend when she and MCNEW started exchanging angry texts. The man said he would be packing up her belongings and that she was no longer allowed in his home. Morrissey threatened to gut him like a deer, and MCNEW told her that he would be defending himself if she approached his property. Morrissey rode her motorcycle to his home on August the 6th. It was there that she shot MCNEW between the eyes, killing him. The scene was then made to look like a robbery had occurred. His body was discovered 2 days later. Following her arrest on an unrelated charge, the truth began to unravel after Morrissey told a cellmate she'd murdered her sugar daddy. Investigators were informed, and while Morrissey subsequently tried to claim self-defense, the evidence, including DNA she'd left at the scene, pointed to an execution. The woman was sentenced to life in prison. Number 4. MELINA ROBERCE. In August of 2018, a group was arrested in a Sydney port while trying to smuggle cocaine worth millions of dollars into Australia. They were aboard a luxury cruise ship called the MSC Princess. 24-year-old escort MELINA ROBERCE, along with adult film actress Isabelle Legace and 64-year-old Andre Tamine, were on a cruise around the world expected to last 51 days. ROBERCE would later tell the authorities that at some point, she and Legace had been talked into becoming drug mules by her sugar daddy. The unnamed man had introduced ROBERCE to multiple wealthy men in Morocco, with whom the self-confessed party girl had become intimate. She'd initially said no to the smuggling, but ultimately agreed, as she'd be getting an all-expenses-paid holiday and the chance to boost her Instagram fame. As a decoy, ROBERCE was actually encouraged by her sugar daddy to take selfies in exotic locations and upload them to the social media site. Some of the stops on the trip were in New York, Colombia, Tahiti, Chile, and New Zealand. According to ROBERCE, members of a crime syndicate had collected the massive drug shipment when the ship was docked in Peru. Several suitcases containing multiple kilograms of cocaine were stashed in Tamine's cabin, as well as in the luxury cabin that ROBERCE shared with Legace. Between them, they had almost 100 kilograms of cocaine. The drugs that ROBERCE and Legace were carrying had a street value of around $21 million. They were discovered by customs agents. The cocaine cuties, as the media would dub them, were each sentenced to over 7 years in prison. During her trial, prosecutors described ROBERCE as a vacuous young woman. She's since expressed regrets that her quest for a glamorous lifestyle and social media stardom had hurt people struggling with drug addiction. Legace was released in February of 2021 and deported back to her native Canada. ROBERCE is expected to be released in May. Number 3. Yekaterina Semochkina. In July of 2019, just days before her 25th birthday, a Russian Instagram influencer was murdered by her sugar daddy in Moscow. Yekaterina Semochkina, famous on social media for her resemblance to movie star Audrey Hepburn, had over 85,000 followers and was also a qualified dermatologist. She'd been in a relationship with 33-year-old Maxim Gariev. Whenever the pair got together, Gariev would give the young woman money to support her lifestyle. Surveillance cameras had captured him entering her apartment on numerous occasions. Semochkina then started seeing a wealthy 52-year-old man whose identity wasn't released. She met with Gariev as she was packing her suitcases for a birthday trip to Amsterdam with her new lover. According to Gariev, after they'd slept together, Semochkina began to insult and humiliate him. She reportedly called him ugly and claimed he'd failed to satisfy her in bed. She had also reportedly insulted his financial status, claiming he'd have to save up for a whole year before he could afford to see her again. Enraged, Gariev grabbed a knife from the kitchen and stabbed her in the neck. Semochkina started screaming and tried to escape to the bathroom, but Gariev dragged her away. He covered her mouth and stabbed her again in the chest. She tried to fight him in the living room but was brought to the ground, where Gariev delivered 2 more knife strikes to her neck. The young woman's parents would later arrive at the apartment to find her naked body stuffed in one of her suitcases. Gariev was later arrested and, after confessing to the murder, was sentenced to 9 years in a Russian penal colony. Today's topic was requested by Vanessa Heslop. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Liu. In 2015, a Chinese man almost succumbed to starvation after his sugar daddy locked him in a rented apartment in Chongqing. The 20-year-old victim, only identified as Liu, was in a relationship with Zhao, a man in his 40s. The latter was a successful vice president of an unspecified Chongqing-based company. They'd met in 2014, and he'd visit Liu a few times a week, leaving him cash each time. As their relationship had started to deteriorate, the sugar daddy started avoiding Liu. On their last day together, Zhao had reportedly told him, "I need to go on a business trip. You don't have to see me anymore," before locking him in the apartment. Liu didn't have a cell phone, and his food supply was meager. He'd spent 5 days in the apartment before, driven by hunger, he tried climbing out of the window. Neighbors spotted him and called the authorities, believing he was a thief. Liu lost his balance and fell on a balcony below, where he was later discovered by the police. They took him to the station, where the young man was given food. He'd already sustained soft tissue damage to one of his legs. Due to an extreme lack of nourishment, Liu survived his ordeal, but doctors would later tell him that had he not been rescued in time, he would have starved to death. Number 1. Mackenzie Lueck. In 2019, 23-year-old student Mackenzie Lueck was murdered by Aola Ajay, whom he'd met through the Seeking Arrangements website, which acted as a platform for connecting sugar babies and sugar daddies. They'd agreed to meet after Lueck returned from her native California to Utah, where she was going to university. Ajay, originally from Nigeria, had a checkered past in his relationship with women. In 2018, he'd met a woman through a dating app and invited her to his home. He began to inappropriately and forcefully touch her while they were watching TV. When the woman tried to fight back, Ajay pinned her down and bit her repeatedly. The man's ex-wife alleged that on multiple occasions, he'd threatened to have someone kidnap and kill her. She also said that Ajay would become extremely aggressive whenever she didn't do what he wanted. In 2019, Ajay tried to have a contractor install a secret soundproofed room under his porch, claiming that he'd use it to hide alcohol from his Mormon girlfriend. The contractor felt uncomfortable and turned down the project. In a separate report, a cleaner said that Ajay had numerous cameras in his home, particularly in the master bedroom. After landing at Salt Lake International Airport, Lueck took a lift and was dropped off at Hatch Park in the early hours of June the 19th. Cell phone data placed both her and Ajay in the park at around 2:59 a.m. It's believed that the man had picked up the would-be sugar baby with the express intention of killing her. To avoid any record of her presence there, he'd turned off his home security system before they arrived at his residence in the Fair Park neighborhood. It was there that he bound her hands with zip ties. He first choked her with his bare hands before turning the young woman on her stomach and strangling her with a belt. Luek would later be found with part of her scalp missing and with a 2-inch hole in her skull. Brain hemorrhage from blunt force trauma to the left side of her head is believed to have ultimately caused her death. On June the 28th, Ajayi was arrested for kidnapping and aggravated murder. A freshly dug area on his property was found to contain some of Luek's charred belongings, along with charred bones and muscle tissue. Ajayi would later tell his lawyers where he'd bury the rest of Luek's remains. They worked with prosecutors, and in early July, her burnt body was found in a shallow grave in Logan Canyon. Ajayi pled guilty to the killing in 2020 and was sentenced to life without parole. Thanks for watching. Would you accept someone paying for your dream lifestyle if you couldn't make any decisions about what you ate, wore, or where you lived? Let us know in the comments section below.